All right, we are live. Welcome to our office hours. Unfortunately, a few minutes late today due to some technical glitches. Anyhow, welcome. This is your chance to ask questions around MDt, ConfigMgr Intune, imaging, uh, Windows, pretty much everything related to Microsoft infrastructure to make it short. My name is Johan. I'll be your host for the next hour here. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to use our different streaming channels to post them. For today, we cannot ask, or you cannot ask questions in the Zoom channel, unfortunately, but we do have YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook open if you want to pop in any questions that I can hopefully answer. So that being said, let me jump over to the questions window and see if we have anything coming in. I would like to mention also that we just started a separate YouTube channel for our streams, so they will no longer be hosted under the same account as I had all my blog videos, etc. We are making one that is dedicated for ViaMonstra Academy here. So stay tuned for more videos on that one. Also, as usual, if you have any questions, comments about these events, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm pretty good in responding to emails and tweets and messages and whatnot, and I'll be happy to hear what your comments are on these type of events that we do here. So that being said, do you guys have any questions at all? While waiting for some questions to come in, I do have some announcement that I can go ahead and share. Uh, see if I can get over to the right screen. Here we go. Beautiful. Now, on our academy, we are launching all new courses for the second quarter on the week starting with April 11th. So we will run 8 courses on everything from MDt, ConfigMgr Intune, Azure, and PowerShell. And we will also have a few mini courses for the community coming up, and there will be the Perfect Lab one. We will do the maximum network performance one, and I'm hoping that I can twist Richard's arm to once again join us for an always on VPN session. So Richard, if you can hear this, the coin has been tossed. It's up to you to catch it. All right. So Eric had a question here on LinkedIn. How can you handle enrollments in Intune when the organization requires MFA, in this case using Intune and on Android phones together with a CA policy today? So in terms of conditional access and enrollments, so you can have separate enrollment policies. However, on the Android side of things, I have absolutely no idea. Uh, I do not work with mobile device management with phones. I do it with Windows devices. However, uh, a good crew to reach out to would probably be, not probably, would be uh, the folks that are running our mobile device management course here on the Academy. So if you scroll down at the bottom, you recognize these folks in the community. They are in general pretty good in responding to questions, even sort of outside of the courses. They are very active in the community, has always been very, very helpful uh, to answer pretty much anything going on. So I recommend reaching out to one of these good folks and see if they have any ideas on that one, because I unfortunately do not. Um, Ross is asking, this is on YouTube. I'm trying to run a sequence to do a Windows 10 upgrade. The upgrade goes well, but we see some start menu apps called MS Resource AppName. Is there a way to fix that or prevent that in sequences? I haven't stumbled across that myself, but I have heard about those types of problems. I like to say that Gary Block wrote something at that at some point. Let me check real quick. Google is your friend. Might have been Adam also. Yeah, so why it showed up like that. Could be that I covered it in one of the recast sessions. No, I did not. How about Mr. Adam? Something in the back of my mind say that these have been. Nope. Always challenging to load live questions, but nope. No, I think I'll have to pass on that one. The only thing I can think of on the top of my head is possibly enforce a new layout to these machines and see if it helps the problem after the deployment. I would just expect that there are some components missing that the previous layout was using, something like that. Who else might know? Jürgen might know that. Nope, no good finding there either. No, I think I'll have to pass on that one, I'm afraid. Great question, though. If I do stumble across something, I'll be happy to share that information next time, meaning next Wednesday. Niklas is asking, is there a good way to enroll to Intune from MDt using an enrollment manager account? I'm assuming you refer to as part of the deployment process. I haven't tried that setup. What I haven't been working on quite a lot lately is the following, where you, not that one, but when you have sequences actively deploying into Autopilot, I think I have it right here also. And you allow the sequence to do that registration. And it's not the client side that's doing the registration. This is just the PowerShell script that sends information about the device to a web service. And there is then a web service picking up the requests and uploading that information to Intune so that the machine then have a chance to be enrolled at the next reboot or when you sysprep and generalize the machine in there. Something I've been testing quite recently is actually to do that a little bit earlier, to as soon as the machine comes up in the specialized pass, force the enrollment that way. And those initial testing works pretty okay so far, but I will certainly update my blog post when I have that in place and can see that it's working reliably. For now, if you wanted to do anything in MDt in terms of enrolling automatically with MDt, I would recommend to read up on this post here that we created for this particular scenario, this one here, because that one goes through that particular scenario using a deployment solution to deploy machines into Autopilot. So this is almost like Autopilot for existing devices, except that you don't previously download the profile as a JSON file and stage it on the hard drive. Instead, you use the more control method where I actually tell a service to go ahead and, all right, register the device and let me know when it actually has an assignment. And then you're allowed to go continue. So it gives you some better control rather than hoping that the dynamic group will pick up a group tag or something like that. Plus, you get some additional logging as well, which is useful for troubleshooting. So something like that. And when it comes to permissions, I would rather use an app registration for those enrollments. So I recommend setting up one that gives access to the Graph API and gives the needed permissions to do what it's supposed to do only. And then you use one of the multiple methods to access that, for example, using a secret key or something in your scripts. But the reason I recommend these server-side scripting is because you can hide them on the server and you only expose that particular piece that actually does the sending of the hardware hash from the client up to the web service and then up in this case, Intune. All right, let's see. Thomas is asking what is possible to do with client through Tenant Attach. So this is a config managed scenario, obviously, where you are using the integration with Intune to manage devices, basically using the Intune portal as a web console for some of the ConfigMgr built-in actions. So I believe, let's see, if I go to this machine here, that was patch my PC. I'm not going to work with them at the moment. Great stuff though. But let's see. So I'm going to log on as a user that is an on-premise user that have been synced through the AD Connect up to Intune, Azure AD, and this account have access in ConfigMgr. Yes, thank you. So I have a few devices at least that are tenant attach only here. PC number 6, I believe. Yeah, PC number 6 and number 7, they are managed by ConfigMgr only, so they are tenant attached. And if I go to these devices, one of these devices, this is where you will get a view what you currently can do on these devices. So you can get recovery keys, you can run CM pivot queries, initiate application deployments, get the timeline about the machine itself, some client details. You have a web version of the Resource Explorer that you have in normal ConfigMgr, and you can run PowerShell scripts. So all these actions that you have here, while they are surfaced in the Intune console, the web-based console, it's actually the ConfigMgr agent that does the job here. So if I would go to this machine and run a CM pivot query, it will actually construct ask the site server to ask the agent to run the query and then reply the result here. And these are actually fairly quickly if you think about what it has to go through to reach that result. But you usually have results within 30, 40 seconds here, even when you remote it this way. In this case, it's going to be no fun because that particular machine is actually turned off at the moment and there will be no replies at all. But this is the stuff you can do through tenant attached devices. All right. Diego is asking, do you know if Intune can deploy a VBScript? Well, technically, yes, because you can run anything in a Win32 app. You can use PowerShell.exe to run a PowerShell script. You can use cscript.exe to run a VBScript. You can have a PowerShell script start a VBScript. I've done that. So there are endless options, really. Basically, these days, if you can run something, you can usually have it run from Intune using any of its mechanism. You cannot just upload a VBScript directly as an Intune script. So you cannot use this particular feature scripts to add in a VBScript, but you can actually run it as an application. So create a Win32 app, construct it to run whatever you need to run, and it will happily run it. I have a lot of my test applications set up that way. They are, this is not applications, is it? If I go to my apps, I have a lot of peer-to-peer test applications that we're using purposes. But if you look at the command line on this app, this is actually just running a script. And as I said, that could be a VBScript, that could be a PowerShell script calling a VBScript, or whatever you need to get done. So I answer that question. Nicholas had a follow-up comment to his previous question on MDt deployment, and that was basically, okay, what about hybrid join scenarios? For that type of scenarios, if you you can still do it, but it all comes down on how, in that case, having set up Autopilot also for hybrid Azure AD join and enroll them that way. Not sure how much might be easier to actually go, if you're deploying them on-premise anyway, you might as well want to join the local Active Directory first and then have an automatic enrollment policy kicking in from that end that enrolls the machines into Intune. It won't be through Autopilot that way, but it will be enrolled into Intune and it will get the devices that way. If you want to automate the entire sphere going the Intune route into a hybrid Azure AD join, you should be able to use the same approach as outlined in this one that I showed you earlier. It will just take much longer because the machine have to request an offline domain object. It has to be synced back up to Intune. The machine has to have the VPN client coming down to be able to completely do that. Sounds like a lot of ifs and buts on that one. A lot of things that can and probably will go wrong. Hybrid join is in general something you should try to stay away from, but as always, there are solutions to it. I'll still say this would be a good start to research, and we can definitely help as well if you're interested in getting some consulting assistance around this area. It's just that not something I have a ready-made community solution for to do this also with hybrid join. Dave is asking, can I post the link in the chat? I can certainly try. Not sure how well the Restream chat application does replies here. But I'm pretty good with copy and pasting. Try that one, see if that works. Did come back and confirm that it pasted it at least on. Yeah, it doesn't do it for LinkedIn post, unfortunately. It does do it on the YouTube and Facebook posts. I think I read that was actually a limitation in the chat application I'm using. I can't even right-click and do a reply. So fairly easy to find. Deployment research, search for cloud, you'll find it. All right. Ross is asking on YouTube, I said in a previous office hours that there are currently no immediate book releases coming, especially as dealing with PrideBook. Have I thought about running a similar course through the Academy? I actually have not, but it's a pretty dang good idea. So I'll make a mental note about that one. For those of you that is curious to what Russ asking about, it basically comes down to that a few years back, me and my customer wrote a book. Pretty proud of the cover as well, but this was the one. It's a pirate ship on the front about how to develop for MDt and ConfigMgr in terms of doing OSD customizations. So basically, the request here was for a video version of this type of topic. So it's a dang good one. Stealing with Pride video. I'll see what can be done about that one. Thank you. And thank you for liking the book as well. All right. Any other questions? So there is a question coming in on YouTube. When will the device object be creating during a white glove deployment? Well, if you use an approach when you want to use white gloves, you basically can tap the Windows key a few times, well, 5 times, as soon as the machine hits the out-of-box experience. That machine have to be registered just shortly prior to that. Currently, as I mentioned, I'm trying to test to do that already in the specialized pass, and so far the test looks promising. What you also can do is you can deploy the machines into full Windows, do the registration there, have a script wait for the assignment, then sysprep generalize, and the machine will then boot up in the out-of-box experience, and you can press the Windows key 5 times to get into the white glove or pre-provisioned scenarios, as they're called these days. That I have tested, and that works well, but it does add another 5, 6, 7 minutes to the entire process. And I was basically trying to cut away those 6, 7 minutes to make it a bit faster. So I'm trying to achieve something that is in between Autopilot for pre-existing devices, where you use the JSON file and put it in a Windows folder, compared to having the machine come up all the way into Windows, have it register itself, and then boot it back into out-of-box experience. I'm trying to snatch it right in the middle. But I'll keep you updated on that process. I actually been working with a customer in Australia this week for this very purpose. So hopefully we'll have a good result soon. We made some good progress last night for sure. All right. That's an interesting part, by the way, working with folks in Australia is that their morning is my evening. So we start at 4:30 and I'll work until 11 or so until I get too tired to see code straight. But yeah, that's what we were doing last night. Any other questions? All right, there's a question coming in on LinkedIn. Is it possible to set a sequence of installed apps in Autopilot? Not in the user interface itself, but you can certainly have it run a sequence if you put your heart into it. There are hooks in the Autopilot to run a ConfigMgr task sequence through Cloud Management Gateway. So you can have an application only sequence that installs your 5, 6, and apps or whatever you have in a certain order inside of that sequence, and you simply tell Autopilot to start that sequence. Technically, you can do other stuff. You can have, and I've been doing this in the past. I have generated, and this was way back. This was back before Intune had really good support for the Win32 apps. Let's see, it was back in 2018 at some point, so 4 years ago. If you have an MDt deployment share, you can generate a standalone offline media of that one. And that can be as simple as a deployment share having 5 apps. And you run those apps in a sequence. And you generate the media from that one. It's not going to be very big. Because that media, as long as it's being started by a PowerShell script in Intune, or a VBScript for that matter, it will happily run that sequence. And it doesn't matter if it happened to be in a running Windows or if it's a part of the enrollment status page phase of Autopilot. So that can be a bit of a clunky workaround, but at least it gives you that exact control of applications. You can achieve the same thing with wrappers. I mean, you saw my example earlier when I showed that my peer-to-peer testing applications, they were actually started by a PowerShell wrapper script and not like a setup.exe or MSI-exec type installer. You can have a PowerShell script that simply install those 5 apps in a certain order. And as like you can create like your own bundle app in Intune by simple scripts. So multiple options there. It's just that it would be nice to have a better picker, I think, in the Intune portal that allows you to control the order better for apps that are in the enrollment status page. Actually, I think I saw a user voice item on that recently, or at least a request on it, but because it makes sense. All right, let's see. The question is, if you have ConfigMgr on premises and you want to manage Azure machines or machines in Azure, do I need to have a cloud distribution point? No, technically you do not. As long as there is a site-to-site communication, ConfigMgr doesn't really care what network your machine happens to be on. If your machines in Azure do not have site-to-site connection, but they are connected to internet, which most of them are, then you can use a CMD for that scenario because they will happily connect to that one. And since CMDs these days are also up in Azure, I kind of expect that communication to go quite quick. The only downside is usually well, you have to pay for that they download whatever they're downloading, but it's usually not too much money involved with having a cloud management gateway up and running. I was actually a few years back, I was asking some of our customers to please share with us that we can publish on the blog their real world costs for having devices. And this is no difference if there is a client device or a server device. It's about the same costs in terms of what they download. But roughly a lot of these organizations, even the larger ones, we typically end up in the 3, 4, 5 cents per device per month as a cost to manage these guys. I mean, your mileage is going to vary because it's depending on how much you actually download, but in general, these are the numbers we actually see. These are real world numbers, so it's not too terribly expensive. All right, let's see. There's a question on LinkedIn regarding the admin service in ConfigMgr. Has the capability to remove custom web service access on the, let's see. I have to read this question a few more times. That was a long one. Wait a minute. Okay, the shorthand version here. Do you have any plans, or basically the question is for me, do you have any plans on move some functionality that I previously had in my custom web services for moving machines to AD, etc., into using the admin service in ConfigMgr? Well, the thing here is that the admin service in ConfigMgr can only do what it can do. I have seen no options of actually extending it with your own custom code that will kind of defeat the process of having a ready-made web service. So unless I missed the memo somewhere, if you want to use functionality that is outside of that, you would either have to go back to borrow some of the community-driven web services that already exist, like this one, for example, or you have to use something like this, which your security folks might be more open to, where you're using a PowerShell-driven web service instead, where they actually can see the code that is running. I've learned that sometimes security folks can be a little hesitant to just install a DLL that you found on the internet. Even though you say that the guy who wrote it is trustworthy, it can sometimes be a little bit uh, an uphill battle, put it that way, for these. But if they can see it's just a PowerShell script that happens to run on the server, sometimes they're more open to that because it's so easy for them to review what it's doing. So I really like this concept. I just started to play with this last year in more extent, but it's so simple where you have a server-side script that does something, in this case, contacting an MDt database to get stuff. And then there is client-side script requesting or talking to that server-side script. Because you expose only certain things. The logic here, the connection to the database, that all happens server-side rather than on the client. All right. Clive is asking on YouTube, see here. Basically, how the different company portal behaves in showing the Win32 apps, where the real application shows up, the application is deployed nicely, but the web-based one does not. I have to check out on that one. I rarely use the web-based portal, if at all, and prefer to deploy the company portal app everywhere because it does have some additional functionality that the web-based portal does not have, or the web-based company portal does not. Yeah, I think I'll have to follow up on that one. All right, let's see. Question coming in on Facebook here. Is there a chance to modify templates to support new roles and features in Windows 11? Absolutely, yes. That was something we had to do back in the days when MDt had a bug in, I think it was one of the server templates. But these roles are just VBScripts running in the background together with an XML file. So even if you cannot do a change in the user interface, you can certainly change how they behave if you stumble across a bug or something that needs it. For now, if you want to do full Windows 11 support for roles and features, I would just recommend adding a custom script to the sequence to install those. Of course, you can parse whatever setting, and just to show what I'm talking about here, this is an MDt sequence for Windows 11. And if I would add in roles and features, there is no Windows 11 to select from here, unfortunately. So this is an update that Microsoft will have to do. But in the backend, in the scripts library, there are templates that can help you do this. And since the scripts are all open in MDt, I think it might be one of these XML files. Oh, that's the server deploy wizard roles. Nope. Oh, you would definitely have to write some custom there to get that full support right now. Script that does that. So this sequence was ref01. If I go to that control folder, this one here, open the sequence XML. I should open it up in .++, search for install roles. So this would be the script to borrow a few lines from. Because you can still use this to borrow the variables, but you may have to add additional ones that is not available in that list for Windows 11. So if you open that script, be the one. Look into that one and make a custom version of it. All right. Let's see. There's a question regarding installing certificates using Intune and using an Azure app proxy. This in case it's for a SCEP cert. Plan to use custom domain. We have 3 different nodes, servers, 3 different URLs. That one I don't know on the top of my head. Please reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll see if I can guide you in any sort of direction on that one. All right. Question coming in on LinkedIn. Okay, we still happen to have a few Windows 7 devices that are on an enterprise agreement, I'm assuming for updates. Can we have still these managed using ConfigMgr? Currently on ConfigMgr 2107. I read somewhere that as long as machines are under a paid agreement with Microsoft to get updates, that the ConfigMgr team will support them. I saw that statement like 2 years ago. And let's support something. For it. Yeah, if I'm reading, let me bring it up to screen real quick here, but if I'm reading this statement right, regarding Windows 7, not really related to the exact, the question is not really related to the answer, so to speak, but basically if you have an operating system covered under the extended security updates program, like some Windows 7 devices still can be, I'm assuming, then you have to use the latest version of ConfigMgr current branch to support them. So I'll like to say it's yes, but obviously you should check with your support folks to be certain. But as far as I'm reading this, it can be done. It is supported as long as you have that agreement that you are paying X million dollars for updates and using the latest version of ConfigMgr, they should be supported. Basically, this article describes that process. So, yeah. All right. It's 10 a.m. Chicago. It's Wednesday. It's been a pleasure having you guys on board for the office hour. Apologize for the slight delay in start today, but we'll be back again next week. I believe we moved it to, Yes, 4:30 p.m. next week, March 9. So hope to see you guys again next week. Thank you so much. Bye for now.